So the script here is basically creating a Lambda function which would trigger when an EC2 instance is stopped or terminated from an account. So this uses a few things. Basically, it starts with CloudWatch logs. So when the CloudWatch logs records the machine as stopping, or you can change it to stopping or terminating or whichever you want. So when it terminates, what happens is an event bridge triggers, which would call a Lambda function, and that Lambda function will pull the details of the machines like IP address, DNS name, and stuff like that, and creates a CSV and write it on to an S3 bucket. That is the logic behind it. So as you can see, what you have here is a Lambda function inside a folder called Lambda and EC2 termination logger, I think that's what I called it, and it's got a Lambda function there. The function is written in Python and it uses the Boto3 client which to interact with the AWS. So if you look at the details of that, what it does is it describes the instances, and the instance ID is picked up from the CloudWatch, and it just gets all the information like public DNS name, private DNS name, public IP address, private IP address, and things like that. And if it doesn't have those values, it just puts NA in there. And in our case, it's very unlikely to get public IP address because it's a private network. Okay, and what it does is it creates, it formats the current date time with a YYDD and YYMMDD format, and which is just to understand when the machine is terminated. And it creates a file called year month -terminate.csv. So we want to get it for every month, which is why it has got this YYMM format. So for next month it will create a new file. So we have a bucket name which would be passed as part of the environment variable. You can see it's called S3_bucket there, and that is pulled from this environment variable, and I'll show you when it is set, which would be in a Terraform function. Okay, then it gets that S3 client. Then it creates a new file with that S3 key and stuff like that. That is for encryption and all of those kind of things. And it creates a string out of these values which we have mentioned earlier, all these private DNS and all of that. Then output IO to string IO, so it creates a file out of that and just write that CSV into the S3, and it creates some the first line is obviously the headers, domain name, IP address, shutdown time, and things like that. Then it writes all of those values which we have captured earlier. Okay, then you can see upload to S3, S3 client put object, which is where it writes. Then once it is written, it writes successfully wrote. And this is also important because this is an unattended function. You have to make sure it the logs are written somewhere. In our case, it's basically writing into CloudWatch logs, so we'll be creating a CloudWatch log specifically for this as well. And once it is there, it just says okay, termination logged successfully, and instance ID and those kind of things in there. And if it's an exception, obviously it captures the exception as well. And this is the the Python function, the actual Lambda function. And termination logger.tf, this is actually the creation of the Lambda function and stuff like that. So if you look at that, it creates an S3 bucket and S3 bucket name, which is available in this variable. You can see S3 bucket name there. It's picked up from there. Then okay, let me just run kind of publish it into Git so we can log on to the machine and see what's happening there. So in the background, we'll be creating all of these kind of things. So Yeah, it creates an S3 bucket, and you got some tags in there, in the S3 bucket, just to understand where it is, what it is, some information about it. And what it does is it takes that Lambda file and make a zip file out of that. You can see the Lambda EC2 termination logger, which is the name of that folder, and it creates a zip file out of that. Then it creates some roles, which is the Lambda role for to run that function. And also it needs it attaches this Lambda policy onto that role, and basically it allows to create a log group, a log stream, and a log event. So basically we are writing into CloudWatch logs. Okay, and it has got this describe instances as well, which we are calling in that function. And it also need a permission to put object and get object onto the S3. So this is the policy, and that policy is basically attached to this role over there. Okay, and this is the Lambda function. Basically it just compresses that file as a zip file. And we are using Python 3.11, and there's a timeout also set in there. Okay, and this is the another thing which is quite important. We had to pass that S3 bucket name as an environment variable of Lambda. Okay, and which is where it picks up from. In Lambda function we have seen it is os.environ.get, and it gets the value from that that environment variable which we are setting here. Okay, which we are setting over here. Yeah, S3 bucket. Okay, that is the variable over there, and this is the same variable will be used in the environment, which I'll show you. And obviously it depends upon this Lambda policy and this zip file. Okay, then obviously we are creating a CloudWatch log group. It's called termination logger.function name. It will pick up the function name from the Lambda function and creates a log group there, and we'll be keeping it for 14 days. But obviously in my case I normally destroy it as soon as I'm done. Okay, and this is the rule. So whenever there is that that function runs, it writes some logs on it. And this is a state I'm using. So we need a CloudWatch event rule we had, which is basically what we are looking for. So in our case we are using either of these: stopping, shutting down, or terminated. So these are the three functions which we are looking for in the CloudWatch log. And there is an event bridge as well, which is it triggers whenever there is a state change. It triggers that value and picks the information from there. So that's all. So you can see CloudWatch event target is basically that Lambda, and then Lambda permission is basically to allow execution of event bridge. So once the event bridge is executed, it starts. So let us see what's happening. So if you go here and see, let us see whether that has been created or not. Terraform deploy. Oh, it's still running. So let us see how far it has reached. Oh, it's still on Terraform apply. Okay, it's creating an ALB at the moment. Okay, it's all done now. So now let us log on to AWS and see what's going on there. So normally basically I create two machines, root user, login. Okay, so that's my 2FA in. So hopefully we should get in there. So there should be two machines coming up there. Yeah, you can see an Apache server and an Nginx server. And if you look at the Lambda function, we should be able to see the function over there. EC2 termination logger, that is the function. it's loading, and you can see the trigger for that is this CloudWatch event bridge. Okay, and yeah, this is the Python function which we wrote earlier, and if we look at the environment configuration, we should be able to see that environment variable of S3 bucket, which is called EC termination logs bucket. And let us look at the event bridge, Amazon event bridge, which is dashboard. Let us look at that. Yeah, rules. And it's a very simple rule. So basically EC2 instance termination. So stopping, shutting down on terminated, and with the it targets to this EC2 termination logger, which is a Lambda function. And as of S3, if you look at the S3, that bucket should not be created now. Actually, it is created. But the file won't be created. Yeah. So this is the bucket which we'll be using, and as you can see, it's empty there at the moment. So we have this event bridge. So we have this S3 bucket, we have this Lambda function, and we have this EC2. Don't know why it is asking to sign in again, but yeah, they are the information in there. And let us look at CloudWatch as well, just to see that log group is created or not. So log groups, yeah, termination logger, and if you look at that, there shouldn't be much in there. So there is no log streams at the moment because it's never been triggered. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we go to EC2 instance and sign in again. Okay, Apache server, let me just instance state. I'm gonna stop it. Stop. So we'll go to CloudWatch. I don't know why always this comes up. Okay, let us see here. There you go. So if you refresh that, yeah, there is a stream has been created, and we should be able to see whether there is an entry in there. So you can see successfully wrote S3 bucket 2510 terminated.csv, which means that file should be created now. So what we can do is go to S3 and refresh here, just see whether that file is being created, and you can see there is a file being created with 133 KB, and let us download that. Actions, is there a download in there? No. Yeah, there is downloading here. So there you go, that's a file, and if you just click on that, there you go. So this is the domain name, and that is the IP address of the machine, and it was shut down on 10:32, which is 11:32, and this is instance ID. So let us copy that instance ID, copy, then we'll go to EC2 and look at whether that machine is which matches or not. As you can see, that is the machine which is stopped, and that is available in this file as that instance there. So that is pretty much it. So just to recapture, so this is basically this Lambda function which triggers uh, when once the machine is shut down, then it creates a CSV file in this S3, which is quite simple. Okay, hope you get the idea. Thank you.